Our first keynote for tonight is going to be leadership characteristics of professional engineers with the Mexico Society of Professional Engineers. And
good evening, everyone. How are you doing? What a crowd. Thank you for coming. So I need the first couple of things to take place here. For all of those of you here that are east of the Mississippi River, please stand up. All right, let's give a round of applause. All right. Stay standing, guys, stay standing. Now the rest of you west of the Mississippi, stand up. Now, the balance of you that are south of the Mississippi, none of us are. Okay. My name is Richard Martinez. I'm one of the presenters today. And I am a registered professional engineer in Arizona, New Mexico, and Saudi Arabia. I did some work over there, a couple of tours, and back to New Mexico, worked with a large couple of firms, now working in Los Alamos National Labs, and a couple of other, just a whole lot of different stuff that I won't get into because it's about you guys today, and I want to get into the presentation, and it'll be all time for questions. Okay, guys, you good with that? Good. So, presentation topic today is leadership characteristics, and I'll see if this thing will work. Oh, how about this one? So, first of all, in the profession, and as you can see, there are different professionals. Doctors, down to teachers, and professors. Now, that might be in the hierarchy of salary, if you will, but in my profession, I like to go from the top, from the bottom up. As teachers, professors, engineers, architects, designers, and so forth, because they're, in my opinion, a lot of the real leaders in society, and you probably know that from your teachers back in elementary school, all the way up into your academia now. So it's just the thought that those are the key professions that are certified and or have, licensing capabilities. So attributes of a profession or professional, I'll let you guys read through that. But a lot of it that I get into, its knowledge and skills are distinct and are not common professions of the general public. And you as engineering students, you're getting into that realm. So you will find that you will be unique, and that when you get into your professions, you will find that it's very beneficial in many, many ways. Next. So one of the things that, as a professional, it's a practice is governed by rules of conduct, codes of ethics, and recognized obligations to society and other practitioners. Remember, as you become engineers and as you get into professions, whether you're going to be engineering design, engineering management, or practitioners, a lot of the engineering design effort is to maintain for the safety of the public and for all your counterparts. So making certain that however you design, whatever work that you do, you have to maintain for the, maintain the safety of the public. I'll let you guys read through some of that. So skills of engineers, you're all familiar with these, soft skills and hard skills. So some of the soft skills, the hard skills, what you're accomplishing now, technical design, modeling, problem solving, AI, and so forth. But you also got to remember, as a professional, you have soft skills. You got to remember to keep lifelong learning, project management, teamwork, time management, and you also want to continue your education. So on the other soft skills, communication. That's one of the areas that I find very beneficial for the work that I've done in the past and the work that I'm going to continue to do in the future. And then keeping in mind that ethical and societal responsibilities, and the contemporary issues affecting engineering. Remember, once you become an engineer by degree and then by profession, you fall into a great group of individuals that are responsible and have to maintain that. Ethics is key. So, a set of acceptable moral principles and values about what ought to be right and wrong. And you all know that. You were taught that early on, and you're seeing that even in some of your programs, your academia, even from some of your relationships. And as you get in towards society and your responsibilities to society, you have to keep that. At the bottom, code of morality. Sometimes we get into areas and situations where we think that, man, if we deviate just a little bit, is it going to mean that much? Yes, it will, because it means that much to you, and you guys can follow that, right? Again, morality and conduct of behavior. So, judgment principles of right or wrong, as I mentioned, in relation to human action and character. Like they say, is the character of an engineer is what they do when things don't go the way they anticipated or planned, and how they react. Do you fall apart? Do you gather yourself and try to find the solution, resolution? Ask for help is always a good opportunity. And then conduct and behavior, the way a person responds to a set of conditions or circumstances, good or bad. That's your character, conduct and behavior. So I can go through all of this, but a lot of keywords here are fairness and equity must be dedicated to the protection of the public health, safety, and welfare. That's key. So remember in your designs, and we have different levels of design for safety in projects to go through construction. If you can design safety into your project, great. If you have to do administrative skills to keep it safe, even better. Last and the last of it all is PPE, hard hats, safety shoes, safety glasses, hearing protection, but you design it into it for the safety and health of the public. Next one. So in American Society of Civil Engineers, a lot of the same ethics apply. Using their knowledge and skill for the enhancement of human welfare, and then striving to increase the competence and prestige of the engineering profession. Now, you can apply that to every discipline: nuclear, chemical, environmental, electrical. And if you feel that you need that foundation, these are the tools that you can use to get there. And of course, other disciplines. So why ethics codes? Well, you can go through that list and support for enhancement procedures of professional societies and licensing agencies. So these are important because all in compliance, all utilization, and they work well, but also don't use it as an excuse. Ethical behavior when there are countervailing pressures to meet a deadline, cut costs, cover up a blunder, make a sale. Own the work that you do, own your signature, and you'll be better off all the way around. Ethics and leadership, and here again from the top down, unethical acts can signal a failure of management to know how to get the job done the right way. That's key. And if it takes a little bit longer, you can account for that. If it takes a little bit of money, you can request some of that. But start on a project, start on a profession early on, be successful throughout, and you're in good shape. So you're all familiar with with the character competence. So this is interesting because at the very low area of competence and the low area of character, there are people that are pretty much not doing what they need to do. They're called roadkills, something like that. But as you go up the character line, you're still competent, but it's a one-hit wonder. A flash in the pan, they call it. And then when you go on competence, low character, you have competence to corrupt. And how many times have you seen that on some projects, on some efforts, in some public and also engineering projects? It's evident, it's obvious, and it's not to be accepted. Where you want to be is you want to be back over here, noble and competent. And if you're right at the threshold, or you're way back up in here like some of my colleagues, then you're always going to be in good shape. You never have to worry about being accused of anything because you did your best. Whatever plans or documents you stamped and signed as a professional engineer, it's leading into that leadership area. So that's important because those that come after you as you move forward in your career and your continuing education, you're considered a leader, okay? And then leadership attributes. You go through that whole list yourself, but I get over into inspiring. This is huge. And also dependable. Even with your colleagues in classes and the family and on projects, you're dependable and you're inspiring to those that are helping on projects. Other thing is courageous. Sometimes you gotta be bold to make changes, right? You see it all over this campus, and that's huge. And then also be caring. You gotta have the empathy for those that probably don't have the wherewithal to be as proficient as you. Take the time to help engender them to be caring and proficient and improve themselves, because it really, what goes around comes around. A lot of times I've helped a lot of people, and then sometimes I'll need some help, and those people, they remember when I help them, and I'll get some of them, they come back and they help me out. I appreciate that. So we're all familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Who's read those? So if you haven't read it, you might want to take a look at it, because you are all being here today highly effective people, okay? But there's an 8th one, and it's called Restoring the Character Ethic. And it was written by Stephen Covey, and I would recommend you reading that, primarily because the 8th habit Thank you very much.
So now I get to show you some pretty pictures. But before that, my name is Abbas Akhil. I am a board member of the National Society of Professional Engineers. I am a technology developer, engineer, scientist. I worked at the Public Service Company of New Mexico, which is a utility company. Got some broad experience there. Then I moved to Sandia National Labs to develop battery technologies. And I worked there for over 20 years. When I was finishing my career, I branched off into microgrids, which is kind of the buzzword these days, and also electric vehicles and everything else. So my experience is somewhat different. And what I'm going to show is a few slides to you for basically what does a leader do? You know, in this case, you have to start with the premise, and this comes from Ralph Nader. He was an activist who literally shut down the automotive industry at one time because of the, do I need to move closer? Okay, because of the work he was doing to show that the Ford, which car was it? I think it was one of the Fords that was very dangerous because the way they had designed the fuel tanks, and people were dying in crashes. He became very famous, became very outspoken. I don't know where he is now, but this is a saying that, I mean, this is one of the principles he had. He said, you know, I start with the premise that the function of leaders is to produce leaders, not followers. What does that mean? It means that you really form the team, and if you're the leader of the team, you empower the weakest link of your team. Just as Richard said just now, you look at the most proficient, they are of course doing the job. Those who are not as proficient, what do you do as a leader? You have to inspire them, you have to mentor them. That's your job as a professional and as an engineer who is leading a team. So that is important. The leadership is not to recognize those who are achieving a lot in your team, but those who are not achieving what they need to achieve. And it's your job as a leader to make sure that they come up to that level. That's how you build a very successful team. And I think the whole idea is, as a leader, you're not just thinking of yourself. You're thinking of the team, and as I said just now, you're also thinking of the weakest link. So when you're mountain climbing, you as a leader, of course, have to know which is your weakest link. And the way we do it there is to make sure that there's a more experienced climber behind your weakest link, so that the chain doesn't fail. And that's what you see here in this picture. The leader is not just leading the way, but he has organized this whole chain so that the weakest link is the most supported. That's what your job is as a leader. And then the next one, what is overachievement? Basically, these are the people who are the most qualified. You have selected them to be on your team, but you're inspiring overachievement. You're not, in the next slide, actually this is more compelling, you're not demanding overachievement, but you're inspiring overachievement. And that you do by making sure that you are on the top of your game and you are taking care of the team, while still making sure that the objectives of this project that you're working on are not lost. And that takes a lot of compromise, a lot of management on your part as a leader, because you cannot lose the objective of what you're working for, but at the same time, your job is to make sure that your team performs to achieve that objective. So you have to inspire overachievement. And there's always going to be negativity. There's people who are achievers will look at those who are not as highly achieving, and there's going to be some kind of friction in your team. And your job as a leader is to diffuse that negativity, to make sure that each one in your team is equally valued and recognized. That is very important. And as I said before, you're not really going to demand overachievement. That is not going to work. You have to demonstrate and inspire that achievement that you want. Okay, this is really important because I fly planes, and you see this pattern in the sky always, and there are two reasons for it. One is the leadership. So this is the lead duck that's flying right up front. But why are the others following it? There are two reasons. Of course, they trust the navigation of that leader, but they also are making use of aerodynamics, because the weight coming off the wings of the first one supports the second one. The weight coming off the wings of the second one supports the third one. So the whole group works as a team. And you will see that whenever they fall out of formation, they are astute enough and they have enough instincts to make sure that they come back into formation. But they're always following the leader. Hummingbirds, which is one of the smallest birds we have in North America, they can migrate 2,000 to 3,000 miles with a brain that is smaller than the size of a pea. All right. How do they navigate? So remember that. It's not what your brain is, but what your instincts tell you and how you are navigating the environment around you. That is important. And then again here, this type of flying is very difficult. Again, the wingman is there to protect the leader, but how do they communicate? And this is more than important when you're looking at Thunderbirds. If you've followed their air shows, either the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds, they're flying in such tight formation that each one has to remember and follow the leader. There is no room for giving voice commands. So when they separate from formation, they depend on the breathing pattern of the leader. He literally gives commands by the way he breathes. There's no time to give a voice command for each one to do what they need to do. So this is extremely important. You've got to understand, you've got to influence, and you've got to make sure you're aligned with what it is you have to do. So with that, I'm going to hand off to the president of our society.
All right, thanks, Abbas. My name is Joanna Maloff, and I'm the president for the New Mexico Society of Professional Engineers. I'm a licensed civil engineer, and I currently work for the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority as the chief engineer for the Water Distribution and Operations Group. So, let me get the microphone on here. All right. So I'm going to finish off our presentation talking in more detail about some of the soft skills that are required for leaders in our field. To start off, we've already talked about this a little bit, but leaders must be inspiring. Think about a mentor or someone that has helped you succeed in your career so far. How have they inspired you to get where you are today as leaders at your universities? Inspiration leads to creativity. When you're in an environment where you feel supported and motivated, you cultivate the best ideas. We all know how important creativity is in the field of engineering. In 2021, in the post-COVID era, Forbes magazine posted, technical difficulties. It's not easy when you don't have a collar to put it on, I guess. Maybe we'll put it on this. Okay. All right. So in 2021, Forbes magazine posted an article about the 6 traits of inspirational leaders. These traits included being calm in stressful situations, showing a human side, listening, being resilient, showing integrity, and developing talent. You'll remember when Richard was talking about the 8th habit of highly effective people, these traits tie right into that. As engineers, unfortunately, some of these traits don't always come natural to us, but they're extremely important to learn, and these traits contribute to what we're calling the 3 R's of leadership. So the 3 R's that we're referring to are relationships, reputations, and results. So we're going to talk about each one of these a little bit more. So how you build relationships is key to your success as a leader. I currently manage a large operations group with 6 direct reports, and only one of these employees is an engineer. Even if you plan on only ever leading engineers in your career, I cannot stress enough how important it is not to come into the room personal experience that that's not a way to develop relationships. This comes back to one of the questions or some of the discussion we had in our panel session this afternoon about the differences between a manager and a leader. One of the things that we tell new supervisors at my utility is that you're only as good as the people that work for you. So developing strong working relationships with your employees or the members of your organization is critical to achieving your goals as a leader. Some of these photos show some pretty strong relationships. So what is at the foundation of any good relationship, either personal or in the workplace, is trust. There's some great tips on this slide about how to develop trust in the workplace or in a professional organization such as the Engineering Student Council. So some of those include valuing long-term relationships, being honest, honoring commitments, admitting when you're wrong, or even admitting when you don't know something. It's okay to say, I don't know, and I know that's hard for engineers often, but that's where the vulnerability comes in. It's really okay to have someone that has more expertise or experience working for you. You should use it to your advantage. To build trust, we have to communicate effectively. And we all know it's not easy to have to tailor your communication style to your audience, but that's what you have to do to be the most effective. Be helpful and show people that you care. So when I assign a task to one of my employees, I ask them if they need help from me or if there's anything that I can help related to the task. And I also ask them, did I provide clear direction of what I'm looking for? Remember, it's not a one-sided relationship. You should empower your employees, but also take ownership of the task with them. Lastly, stand up for what's right and be transparent. As a professional engineer, as Richard and Boss discussed a little bit earlier, we have an ethical responsibility or a duty to do what's right for the safety of the public. So those that you lead will respect you and trust you if you take a stand, you be direct and to the point. This is also where confidence comes in. So once you have developed a strong relationship as a leader, you can help your employees maximize their potential by playing to their strengths. Don't focus on their weaknesses because you're fighting a losing battle. If they like to do something and they do it well, you can draw on their talents and you can use it to your advantage. So the next R that we're going to talk about is reputation. So I'd like to start off talking about reputation with a quote from Jeff Bezos. Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. So this is probably a common quote that we've heard before. I feel like we can relate this back to standing up for what is right and an engineer's ethical responsibility. As a leader, developing relationships with trust and respect can help you to craft your brand. Your employees or your team members may not always agree with you, but they will respect the decisions you make because you have that foundation of trust. So I want you to think about your own reputation. Remember that your reputation is how you're being perceived in addition to your values. As a leader, you are representing your team and at a larger scale, probably your university or organization, so you should always take responsibility and help where you can. You are responsible for the success of the organization, so you may ask, why are we focusing on our own reputation? Isn't that selfish or egotistical? My answer to that is no. You need to understand how your reputation impacts the entire organization. If you're known to have a positive attitude, be a problem solver, and approach all jobs in a safe way, this will reflect well on your team and the organization. This will also encourage your team members to follow suit. So to be a role model for them, you need to be self-aware. When we're talking about reputations, we want you to focus on the self-awareness aspect of it. So, there we go. We should all know that leading out of fear or bullying is not acceptable in the workplace or any professional organization or life in general. As engineers, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. We should not manipulate employees or team members in negative ways, as it creates a culture of distrust in the organization. As a boss mentioned previously, if we can learn to diffuse negativity, this will help us become successful leaders. But this does not mean that we avoid conflict altogether. We have to learn how to effectively deal with conflict. And finally, the last R is results. So how does a leader get the results that they want? They create momentum through action. They have to learn how to motivate their employees or team members, and they accept that there is no I in team. It's very hard to go from being a worker bee in a very, very task-oriented position into a leadership or management position. You have to learn how to delegate and how to manage. Lasting great results come from creating a movement, and you have to create value for others. So this is my last slide. I wanted to show these graphics and give you a couple key takeaways. As engineers and leaders, we really do have the opportunity to change the world. I pulled this graphic on the left here from GE because I felt like it really shows the reasons why engineers are some of the best leaders. We're always trying to find better, more efficient ways to do things. And I really think that's an important trait, definitely, of leaders. So take that to your advantage and use it. The only thing is we just can't forget that human side that I talked about a little earlier, which is why I put this cartoon on there. So before you go out there and change the world, just make sure you're asking your team members what they did over the weekend and how they're doing. Because that helps you develop relationships, improve your reputation, and see lasting results in your organization. That is all I have. I want to thank you for allowing NMSPE to be here and join this great event. I'll open it up for questions for either Richard, Abbas, or I. Any questions? Yes.
I have a question. Richard was the first speaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just took an ethics class in my engineering stuff. I really liked it.
Why do you ask me that?
I'm just wondering, have you ever had a situation in your career where you had to deal with an unethical person? You have to like yourself to like as a leader.
Yes, as a matter of fact, back when I talked about plans and specifications, I had a project where one of my engineers was actually, you can do this, you can replicate for certain plans or details and specifications, but you have to vet them to make sure they meet the current project. And you have to make certain that they're independent and unique enough. And this individual wasn't doing that, and he tried to pass it off at a 30% submittal, told him to correct it, and then he tried to sneak it in at 60% submittal. The client was aware of it, and so we had to call him aside, and we had to sort of start all over. My group, we had to eat the additional costs and time for that effort, and so lessons learned there, and this is very valuable because on every activity that something like that comes up, start jotting down lessons learned, what you don't want to do again in the future. And you can do this in family and relationships, on the racquetball court and things like that, but especially in the professional field, make certain that if something starts to go that way, catch it, address it, correct it. We call them corrective actions, but we were able to catch it in time. And we didn't necessarily reprimand the person, we had them go through retraining. Okay, so that's another key thing because there were so many attributes that this individual had that were contributing to the overall project in the company that there was value. And everyone has value, know that. Everyone has value, no matter where you're at or where you stand. No matter what your family, whatever cousin you dislike, they still have value in the family. So with that, we were able to turn him around, and he became a leader later on. And I think that's what he was probably shying away for in denial. Once he became a leader, he became a really good leader. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
We have,
This is for anyone who wants to answer, but how do you deal with burnout as a leader of engineering?
You attend seminars.
All right, we actually talked about this a little bit in our panel session this afternoon. I think all three of us have been in positions before where we've worked those 60, 70-hour weeks. And it's not easy, especially when you're coming out of engineering school and it's your first job as a graduate level engineer. I think what we talked about today is What's great about the post-COVID era is that there's a lot more flexibility, I think, for you all that will be entering the workforce in schedules. Being, having a hybrid or flexible schedule is definitely more of an opportunity than it was when we entered the workforce. But just having something that is for yourself, whether that's a hobby or, going to the gym, doing a sport, anything that you can do specifically for yourself and you make time for it and you prioritize it, I think that can help with burnout. And then also, being a part of, for me, I think being a part of professional organizations like NMSPE, actually it helps me avoid burnout because I'm still doing something related to my career, but it's enjoyable for me. So it's more of like a hobby and something to get out of the rut of the everyday work, and get to meet with other professional engineers and people who understand what I'm going through. So, Abbas, you got anything you want to say?
So I worked in the industry for about 13 years before I moved to a national lab. And the job that was given to me was basically to head up a technology that was dying in the US and to revive it. By then my oldest son was playing soccer, was in middle school. And that first year, I think I made something like 30 or 40 trips in 1 year out of town. And I missed a lot of his soccer games, his special school assignments, his projects. That is something I definitely regret because for that first few years, because the responsibility for me was so great, I jumped into an area which actually I didn't know much about, but I had the full responsibility of restoring an entire industry sector of the country. And I was meeting industrialists, financiers, technologists, trying to see what is going on. I was going overseas to see what Japan and Germany were doing. I had that big responsibility. For the first 3 years or so, I was literally on a plane every other day. I still remember a point when I landed at the airport in Albuquerque and flights used to go out to St. Louis before that was the hub, and we would make connections there. My manager asked me where I was going, and all I said was, I'm going to St. Louis. He said, where after that? I said, I really don't know. I need to get to St. Louis first, then I need to know where I'm going. So teachers have called me for special awards for my son. I missed those occasions. So keep that in focus. Of course, I started my career at that job later in life, so I had a grown son. But I'm sure by the time you all get married and have children, you'll be starting some high-stress jobs. But you are coming at a post-COVID era. So what Johanna just said is very important. You have much more flexibility. I was working at a time where the laptops were about half the size of this table. Okay. We used to carry them around in airports. So you have it made. Your iPhone is 200 times more powerful than the laptop I had. So make use of that, make use of the technology, but focus on your family first.
So have you, as years of your experience as an employee, saying they knew a lot about a subject, but didn't realize that you didn't? And if so, how did you deal with that down the road?
Yes, we have. Go ahead.
Go.
Okay, so just real quick, the question is, if you have an employee who comes on board and they give you the air or the impression that they're somewhat experts or proficient in
hardest thing about, you know, being a leader is just, and an engineer, is accepting failure. You have to learn about some grace and mercy, I think, in being a leader. You know, your employees are gonna try and do the best for you, and sometimes the best is, we're just gonna fail. And so I think that's what I've found, and also just not being a micromanager. I think you need to empower your employees or your team members to take ownership of their own projects and not be on top of them all the time.
I'll add one more quality to that, it's respect. So you have to respect the best achievers and the lowest achievers of your team. And you have to show your team that they have to respect each other. And that only comes from the fact that if you respect your team, then they respect you. And building that trust and respect is extremely important.